Conceptual search is, there's so much confusion around conceptual search, right? What is it? I'll give you our definition of it very quickly, what it's designed to do. We employ technology that uses mathematics to find patterns within text. When we, and not to give you guys a math lesson, because you're mostly lawyers, so that would be not good, but let me just explain it very quickly. So we employ two algorithms. One, it's called Bayesian inference models. If you're statisticians, you might recognize what that does. What Bayesian is, just to explain it in human terms, is if you saw a boat going down the river, not a boat, let's say you saw a wake, just the wake, you can infer that a boat did that. That, in simplest terms, is what Bayesian inference is. It just says, there's something that caused that. I saw what it was. I knew it was a boat before. It must be a boat. That's what Bayesian does. Then we employ, we couple that with technology called information theory. And what information theory does is it says that unless a word is used within a sentence or a paragraph, it actually carries more meaning, more communicative value, has more weight. And you can put computational value on it. So how it works to create this conceptual search is it looks at the pattern of these heavy weighted words in relationship to each other and says that pattern is consistent with something that I've seen before. And then concepts. So I'll give you an example, and Nate knows this by heart because he's heard it like 50 times. But if I explain something to you as a black and white flightless bird, eats fish, lives in Antarctica, swims in walls, hopefully you're drawing a picture of a penguin. But I never said penguin. And that's what conceptual means. It means that if you start to see these patterns, the engine has enough intelligence built into it to say that pattern is consistent with an idea called penguin. And that's what concept-based search is. Today, more and more in court, you're finding that judges are asking not only for the keywords, but the concepts. So again, in another stylish Enron demo, we can show you the patterns and the relationships between an idea of fraud and an idea called Raptor. And Raptor was the off-balance sheet vehicles that Enron was using to hide their round-trip trading. So that's conceptual search. And that's, I'm done.
I had a question just on that same note. That you do see Magistrate Judge Gritham's famous opinion where he said that if the lawyers are just sort of picking the search terms, that's almost de facto malpractice and insufficient. And where they didn't follow my earlier advice and cooperate with the other side, the judge was second-guessing their methodology. How many opportunities have you guys had to actually work with outside counsel and the client on developing the best search terms and protocols for doing a search?
I haven't at all. No, we have some lawyers on our staff. They're not a billable lawyer, but they basically come in to advise on how to best use the engine to build or at least query against the data to find these concepts. But we don't, as a vendor, personally, we don't get involved with that. We see it more where we have our lawyers in-house actually going out to show people how to use it and build conceptual searches.
Sure, yeah. On our team, we see it on a regular basis. We actually have it as a mandatory process on our services side, not with the software necessarily, but it is mandatory that one of our e-discovery experts or consultants, as well as one of our counsel, actually review the terms. And then we put a second set of eyes on it from a technology standpoint to make sure that anything that we wrote in the background, the correct expressions or whatever would be, agrees that based off this criteria and my understanding of what you're telling me you want, these expressions will give you the results you desire. So we do always put a second set of eyes on it every time. Some customers actually don't like it, which is surprising. They don't want that extra 12-hour delay once everything's going, but we might know we have certain people, certain qualifications that need to look at this because everything's going to be based on that, and you could go down the wrong path if you don't do it this way. And nobody is perfect at writing perfect search terms every single time. The developers of our software are really good at it, but they will occasionally make a minor mistake. But again, that could add 20–30% false negatives or false positives. So that's how we approach it.
I'd throw in, if you're not using a vendor, or what you at least want to do is make sure that if you're outside counsel, you've documented that you've talked to the actual users at the client and gotten input from them on what are the appropriate search terms, what words were you using, because that at least gives you then something that you can go and say, well, I just didn't make this up off the top of my head.
Sorry, if I could add one more thing to that. I would encourage everybody that if you get into a situation where you are thinking about using some sort of conceptual analysis tool, do take a little time to understand how that software actually generates the conceptual analysis that you're going to look at. The autonomy tool is IDLE, Intelligent Data Operating Layer.
Very good.
And Shannon's information theory.
Here, wait.
But you also, for instance, if you were going to look at an Attenix tool, Attenix utilizes a different piece of technology. So theirs is noun phrase analysis. So whatever tool that you are considering, make sure that you spend a little time to understand how that tool generates that. And as having been a vendor, I can tell you that vendors will always be willing to take 5 or 6 gigs of your data and run it through their machine so you can take a look at what the results are. So take a look at it in Attenix, take a look at an Autonomy, take a look at some of the tools we'll talk about here in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. All righty, so we've talked about who's doing searching, and we've talked about exactly what is going to be done. And now the rubber's going to hit the road, because now we're talking about exactly what is being searched. Joanne?
Anything we can get our dirty little paws on, we're going to try to find. That's not exactly true, because I'm sitting here thinking, yes, I'd really like to have some of these tools to help us do more complete searches, because I kind of think at some time we are going to miss something. We've been pretty lucky so far and able to do what we do so far and not had to take a case to court. Key operative phrase there, that's that court 4-letter word. So we will primarily search email at this point, again, because that's what our tool does, and it does it fairly well. It does fuzzy searching, and you can construct your syntax and test it out, make sure that's working, and so on. So this kind of goes back, I think Julie asked me about that, did we ever want to cry uncle? And because we don't have a really great tool, I would say, or a very complex tool, I would say there's one time that we really did cry uncle. We were trying to conduct a search that had a lot of numbers, and then street addresses that were numbers or keywords. So, the folks that were working on the syntax just did, word or word or word or word, and we had 100 of them. Well, we didn't get to reduce our data set down to 30%, and only reduced it maybe 1%. So we had to go back to the table to figure out what are we doing. And either by having a tool, or in this case, we're able to get back to our software vendor and say, can you help us construct the search so that it makes sense within the software and gets us the results we need, and then it was successful. Even being able to search email is one of the best things, and even being able to just have a simple tool like we do does mean a lot, because the other thing I'm thinking about is that small successes are just as important as being able to write down that big check to Nikola Tesla and say, come on in, you can start indexing all the data every day that you want. But we don't have that ability right now to do that. So when we have a case before us, or we have at least a hold in place, maybe before a case is even brought to forbear, that we grab the email files of the relevant custodians and archive them, so we've got them somewhat preserved, and then we'll search against that archive. And by doing that ahead of time and doing that as early as possible, we are able to call down that data set. And I've had a couple of very good successes lately where I've had an attorney who is trying to search an email file of a custodian who's no longer with the company, and even though his mail file was just over a gig, I got it down to about 300 megabytes of data. So it's still reduced to quite a bit, not 300 megabytes, but 130 megabytes of data. And they can make some intelligent decisions about where to take the case. That, I think, is important.